everybody, and welcome to the customer service. Without fail, we can't say that without bursting into ridiculous laughter, can we, John?
Nope.
I'm Sean Petrowski, and with me, as always, is my co-host John Lemazny.
Hey, Sean, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Those of you that were paying attention last week maybe have noticed that I'm now starting to wear headphones when we record this. I don't know. I noticed a nicer improvement in audio quality listening back to last week's episode.
You know what? I'm going to throw on my headphones just in solidarity.
Beautiful. I've been listening to the Windows Weekly podcast very regularly now with Leo Laporte, Paul Thurrott,
I love that network,
and Mary Jo Foley. And I noticed that Mary Jo Foley wears headphones. So I figured I'd give it a shot, and I like it. So beautiful. I love your white Apple headphones there.
Can you still hear me?
I hear you perfectly.
Oh, good.
All right, so coming off a big episode last week, this week we got another great episode for you. I think we'll have some really great conversations. First off, John had a very interesting experience at a Quick Check. We were just talking about it in our pre-show prep conversation, and he was thinking it was a throwaway, and then I was like, hey, actually, I had a similar thing happen to me. So we figured we would start off with that before we get into our larger topic for the evening. So, John, why don't you start us off?
All right. Well, thank you, Sean. So this is we have talked many times. Maybe regular audience members may feel like we talk too often about convenience store technology mediation, but it is an everyday occurrence for me. I mean, I usually end up at some convenience store somewhere getting coffee. And it's such a regular opportunity for good customer service that I think that that's part of why it shows up so much in our conversation. So the other day, though, one of my favorites in the New Jersey area of convenience store offerings is Quick Check, because we don't have very many Wawas in this particular area in the state. In Ewing, there's no Wawas unless you travel a bit. I'm in the Plainsboro area, and there are one or two. So, but there's a Quick Check that's fairly close to me, and Quick Check is the poor girl's alternative to Wawa, right? So, and it is quite nice in and of itself. It has gasoline just like Wawa often does. It has a kiosk interface for deli purchases. It has nice fresh to-go food, usually. Really, actually, very nice to-go food choices. They pay attention to nutrition and calories. As a matter of fact, Wawa does not give me caloric information when I order a sandwich, but Quick Check does. So there are a couple benefits to going to Quick Check for me over going to Wawa. So another innovation that they have at a Quick Check that I go to, which I'm not going to mention the particular location, but it's close to me, is that they have self-checkout, right? So I can take my purchase slip, and I can take my coffee or whatever, and go and scan it, and not have to bother anybody. As a matter of fact, if I didn't want to, I would not have to speak to anybody. I usually say hi to the deli clerk, the sandwich master, or say hi to whoever's there. But I don't have to. I can go in, get the stuff I want, do a self-checkout, and leave. If I'm in a rush, for example, that could be a great benefit. And there's three of them, 3 kiosks, self-checkout kiosks, right in a row. So no waiting. Well, this day, I have been going to convenience stores less, and I've been making a lot of choices that are a little bit different. And one of the choices I've made is that I make an active choice not to use the foam cups or the paper cups that they have at the convenience store, but rather use my aluminum coffee cup. so that I can, save a piece of paper. It's a little tiny thing, but makes me feel better, and it saves me a little money. It's the difference between a $2 cup of coffee or a $1.75 cup of coffee and a dollar cup of coffee. And QuickCheck has some good deals. As a matter of fact, I think on New Year's Day they have free coffee, and there are good benefits to going to QuickCheck for coffee. And they have some nice choices. They have an extra caffeine choice, which I really like. I love their extra caffeine coffee. It's a light roast. So anyway, I went up, got my refill, and walked over to the self-checkout. And there was a single woman who was manning the registers. And at the time, she was having some sort of a problem. So she was down on the ground, and she had something open where she was, whatever, I don't know. For all I know, she was soldering up wires. I don't think she was. So just to confirm, almost out of like my own little bit of guilt, I wanted to acknowledge her because she was sitting like at the next kiosk over, and I wanted to, it's just my little thing. Like, I don't ever like when somebody might think that I'm trying to get away with something, so I wanted to acknowledge that I was getting a refill, and I wanted to make sure that I was going about it the right way, and I wasn't supposed to be going to the live register, because they do have a live register. More than anything, I just didn't want to cause an issue. So I said to her, can I get this refill at this kiosk? And she looked at me, she stood up, and she proceeded to go through the transaction in order to purchase the refill. And I said to her, I got it out like 3 times during the transaction because she had a little bit of trouble. I said, I didn't mean to take you away from what you were doing. I can take care of this. I just wanted to know whether or not this was the best way to do it. I didn't want to take you away from what you were doing. I just wanted to see if this was what I should do. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to take you away from what you were doing. She never said a word to me. When the transaction was done, she walked away, and she like glared at me as though there was no way that I was going to be remedied or apologize. There was no way for me to solve the issue. It was like an issue was mandated, and it aggravated me because she represents QuickCheck. If I had just gone up to the kiosk and started my transaction, I never would have had an interaction with her, and I would have gone about my business and had a great time. I would have walked out thinking, wow, I really love QuickCheck. Instead, I fumed in my car for like 15 minutes while I enjoyed my coffee, my extra caffeine coffee. I probably wouldn't have fumed so much, except I was drinking the extra caffeine. Thinking she took what could have been a simple question-answer interaction, which is one of the few reasons why she still exists, because with the self-checkout kiosk that I can get the free refill at, or the low-cost refill at, I really didn't need to interact with her at all. She didn't need to be there. They could have had a camera to replace her. She could have been replaced with a Bash script, probably even a Windows script. And what aggravated me was she took a neutral situation and made it exceptionally negative because of some situation that she was going through. I understand she was having a bad day. Not my problem.
Mm-mm.
She could have said, yes, you can do that. And if I had needed help, I could have continued. So the moral of the story is, listen to what's actually being asked. Don't try to interpret what the need is and take care of it, because the customer may actually want to take care of it themselves, or they may be embarrassed by your actions, or they may be... She assumed so much. She assumed probably as much as I assumed in that transaction, and it didn't need to be. And by the way, I went back there today, went and got a coffee, went and got a sandwich at the deli, had a nice little interaction with the deli person, even though I didn't need to. Walked over to the kiosk, got my coffee, got my sandwich, and walked out. Fabulous. The whole thing was fabulous. However, the other day, I checked in to that quick check on Foursquare and wrote a little thing. I said, wow, that was rude. Little does she know I have a podcast about customer service. And they have the opportunity on the Android app for Foursquare where you can heart it or broken heart it. And it was like my first broken heart in a little while. And it made me kind of sad because I love Quick Check. I don't like this particular girl, but whatever. And there's all kinds of reasons why that can happen. Maybe in some previous life, although I don't really believe in reincarnation, maybe in some previous life I wronged her. Maybe she was a cricket and I stepped on her or something. But I don't think that was what it was. I think that she was just upset about what was going on and decided to take it out on me. The problem is she represents Quick Check. She represents Quick Check. And I wouldn't necessarily, if I was somebody else, I might not analyze it in the same way. I might just say, not going back to Quick Check. Or I might say, I'm going to drive the extra mile and go to Wawa. Or I might say, I'll make coffee at home because who wants to go through that nonsense? Every transaction is an opportunity. Every transaction is an opportunity. So, Sean, you wanted to tell me a parallel that you went through yourself.
Yeah, so I don't know when the last time you were at IKEA was, John.
Oh, I go all the time.
Okay, good. So which one do you go to, Conshohocken or South Philly?
South Philly, usually.
Okay, good. So
I've been to both, but I usually go to I've been to Elizabeth once, too.
You and me, we seem to frequent the same IKEAs then.
Yeah.
I've been to Elizabeth once, and sometimes we go to Conshohocken.
If we had to rate them, I would say South Philly. I like South Philly.
I prefer Conshohocken.
Oh.
Because you know why? Because I like the parking situation at Conshohocken.
Parking situation is better at Conshohocken.
And I like the magnetic escalator down to the parking garage.
You hold your cart.
You don't have to. It holds it for you.
It holds it for you, right?
Yeah. So
like magic.
I don't know if you've noticed in South Philly, but they have these cup dispensers at the checkout line. Have you noticed this?
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay, so they've been there for a couple years
What,
now.
just in the cafeteria, or?
No. We're talking like you're paying for your furniture at the cash register.
And they give you I never saw that.
There's a cup dispenser right there on the pole, right next to the cash register. So it's there, and there's a sign right on it that says, freshen up, or, refill, or something like that. And, to like entice you to buy a beverage. And the idea is you pull a cup out of the dispenser, it has a barcode on it, the cash register woman or person is supposed to scan it, and it adds it to your furniture bill, and then you can walk right up to the self-service fountain and get a drink without having to wait online at the bistro there. That's
I love it. That is brilliant.
Right.
I've never noticed it, but I love that.
Pretty brilliant, right?
I love it.
First time I ever saw it, Crystal and I had been there for a long time. It was more like a 4 or 5 hour IKEA trip or something. And I was like, I'm really, really thirsty, and I really could use a drink right now. And I noticed that there was a really long line at the bistro, and I was like, I'm not waiting in line for a drink. So then I noticed the cup dispenser, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. I just get it. She'll add it to the bill, and then I can get my drink, and we'll be on our way. Nope. Pulled that cup out, and I said, yeah, can you add this to the bill? And she said, she hadn't closed our order out. She was still scanning furniture, and she goes, "Oh no, I can't. You can't pay for that here. You have to take that over to the bistro, and they'll check you out there." And I was like, "But the cup's right here. The whole purpose of the cup being here is so that you can ring me up for the drink, and I can just get the drink on my way out." And she's like, yeah, no, you have to take it over to the bistro. I don't have a way of checking that out." I'm like, well, there's a barcode right here on the cup. Can't you just scan it and see if it comes up? And she's like, no, yeah, you have to take it over to the bistro. And so I was like, all right, well, I have this cup. And she's like, oh, you can just bring it over to the bistro. And so we finished checking out our furniture, and I just got the drink, and we left. So I stole the drink.
Sean.
But I was pretty frustrated. I was really...
Yeah, I can understand.
Having been there all day, dropping, it was a big order for us, a couple $100 on stuff, and I just wanted to drink. And then she's, oh yeah, no, I can't do that here. And so I was like, I'm just gonna fucking take this drink. And
I wonder what would happen if you talked with the management about that, because obviously they have that in place for that purpose.
yeah, well, that was like I said years ago, and they're still there. I still see them there. In fact, I think even the Conshohocken one, which has the self-checkout kiosks, the South Philly one doesn't have self-checkout at the IKEA yet, but the Conshohocken one does. You can even do it at the self-checkout, and I've done that since then. You can just scan that cup yourself, and you're on your way. You get the receipt. It's on the receipt. You got nothing to worry about. So I haven't attempted it anytime soon recently since in South Philly, but it was like we kind of got into a standoff about it, and it's like, why do I know more about your product offerings than you do? And
did she say, "Aren't you the guy? Aren't you the guy from customer in the service?"
This is before customer service was even a glimmer in our eye, John. Maybe she would say that now if I got into a thing, but
probably. I mean, if she's media aware, she would.
She would. So not exactly the same thing that you had, but sort of similar. And
well, what's the theme? I mean, the theme is really there's a perfectly good way of doing things that lessens interactions, and you had to butt your nonsense into it.
Right.
And you happen to be the representative. You're supposed to be the one who strengthens the brand, not lessens the brand.
Right, and you should be knowledgeable of your product offerings, especially if it's something that's hanging in a dispenser, like literally right next to your head. You know what I mean? Like it's there her entire shift, this entire dispenser of soft drink cups. Like, I don't know. It just drove me crazy.
Well, I think the lesson to be learned is, to remember that you are, we've talked about this before, as we would walk around and do faculty consultation for a university, or whether we would be at the help desk, or whether we would, no matter what we do, we represent the larger brand. What's odd for me now is that I've now transitioned in consulting, where I'm representing myself for the first time in like 14 years, really deeply. So it's like it's really weird to make that transition, because now it's even reinforced even more that a bad interaction with somebody is a bad reflection on me. It's not a bad reflection on the university or some other organization. It's a bad reflection on me. So it's like a little constant reminder, oh, don't be a jerk, because this is affecting your business. But if she had just taken a moment to think about that transaction, and I'm certainly not saying, I didn't in the Foursquare thing, I was like, you have any idea who I am? Which is ridiculous. But that's the idea, is like, you don't know who you are upsetting. You don't know who you're pissing off. You don't know what kind of voice they have. You don't know if they have an audience every week. So it's odd to think that somebody would be so dismissive of a customer, with the idea that, yeah, today I'm buying $1 worth of stuff. I might come in next week and buy something for myself and my 2 kids. So it's like, and as it turns out, I did. I mean, I came back and made a transaction anyway, because one faulty transaction doesn't ruin the brand for me. But if I had that same interaction 3 times, I might have a reason not to go to that particular place. Yeah,
I know. I was just going to say, too, like, the ideas just totally escape me right now. Never mind.
Well, shall we move on to our other topic?
Yes. So I understand, John, that you now, part of your new consulting business, is that you are doing technology assessments for organizations, and most recently you did one for a library. Is that correct?
That's right. Just today, I was out on a library consultation, and I wrote about it a little bit on my blog today. And the idea is that there are many libraries in New Jersey, and I love each of them individually and as a whole. And the one thing that I can offer them that other people can offer them too, but hopefully I have a bit of distinction in the way that I offer what I can offer, is sitting down with administrators at a library and sitting down with the technologists at a library and looking at a particular problem or a set of problems or their entire technology infrastructure and saying, how can this be better? What do we want to do in the next 2 years in order to bring you to the level that you want to be? In other words, what are your stakeholders, and this applies to any kind of enterprise, any kind of company, but libraries have been a regular occurrence for me because of this wonderful relationship that I've built with libraries over a few years. But this would apply to any organization, any enterprise. Saying, why are your stakeholders here? Why are your stakeholders interacting with you? What do they expect from you? What are they seeing that's going on in other organizations in your expertise that they're beginning to expect from you and you may not even know? What are people asking about? What are people complaining about? What kinds of questions are you getting in regards to the technology that you're using? And with libraries, it's very specifically about library-oriented transactions, whether it be circulation. In other words, how do I notify the library that I want a particular book? How do I put a book on hold? How do I mediate that transaction? Can I do it electronically? Can I do it from home? Can I maybe not even go to the library at all, but rather have a digital transaction where it allows me to get the media without even stepping foot in the library? There are libraries that are doing this. There are some libraries that are basing their entire existence on a digital transaction. But there's so much value that's added when we talk about the actual space, because libraries have been doing certain things that have become especially popular recently, such as co-working spaces, right? So I myself, this is my apartment here, I don't typically have my business transactions in here because this is not a presentation space. It's not a office space. It's my home. And I don't currently have $300 a month or $1,200 a month to go have a space that would give me a co-working location or a dedicated location for these kinds of transactions. I have a car and I can travel to your space and work with you. But consultation is typically done in the space of the client for me, because it makes more sense for a lot of reasons. But if somebody wants to sit down and they want to maybe have a cup of coffee and they want to have good internet access and they want to be surrounded with beautiful art and have some sense of what I think my cultural embodiment is, I'll always suggest, for instance, Princeton Public Library, because that space is the closest I can come to for an office that I would design myself in order to represent my brand, in order to have a clean, comfortable, well-oiled, technological space with all of the trimmings, with all the art and the atmosphere and the people and the space that I would want to represent me. And I walk in that building, I have internet access, Wi-Fi, I have a certain ownership because I have a library card there, I get to use the services that are there, and as a result, that is my co-working space. If I want to go there and work for 3 hours or 6 hours or 12 hours or whatever, I can do that because I have the right to be there according to the user's rights. Not all libraries are like this in New Jersey or anywhere. And so, despite the fact that it's a great boon to stakeholders, to patrons, to be able to use that space in that way, not all libraries are equipped for that. Sometimes there's no quiet space. Sometimes the Wi-Fi is not very good. Sometimes the atmosphere is not one that you would want to transact business in. Sometimes that business transaction is not welcome. Sometimes there's situations where you might bring somebody into that space and expect to sit down and be able to have a regular voiced conversation, and the library doesn't allow for that because it's still stuck in this kind of mindset that, you know, shh is the rule of the day. Libraries who are paying attention to the shift in the way that libraries are meeting needs have begun to shy away from that and to recognize that while you might not be boisterous, quiet conversation, reasonable conversation amongst people who are transacting business belongs in the library. It's a community meeting space. It's a community living room. It's a community hub, or it can be. Not always, but it can be. And when it is, I think that's best. And technology usually helps with that, whether it be the Wi-Fi or whether it be security cameras that make sure that everything is safe, or whether it be the ease with which you can take on a transaction, the ease with which you can start a movie download, the ease with which you can borrow a book. And also the extended services, whether there's a cafe present or whether there is a community room present. I keep referring to Princeton Public Library because it has a lot of these things in place, if not all of the things that I really expect from a library in place. They do a beautiful job. And so in going into another library and doing an assessment, we begin to ask questions. What is your general overview of technology? What role do you feel like it plays? What services do you want to offer that you don't offer now? What services have you tried to offer that maybe it was not at the right time, or maybe the pricing was wrong and the pricing has changed? How does your literal technology infrastructure affect your ability to deliver those services? How many routers do you have? How many routers do you need? How many access points do you have? How many access points do you need? What kinds of programming are you doing? Are you attracting the patrons that you could be attracting by offering different programming? Do you have dedicated staff for that purpose? Are you doing or do you have an intranet? Do you have an extranet? Do you have a web presence that represents you well? Do you have social media presence that represents you well? Do you feel like social media presence is an extra effort, or do you see it as another venue for public relations? Do you represent the needs of all of your patrons, or do you make assumptions about what your patrons want? For example, could you get by with a series of Chromebooks? Do you need to have a mixture of Macintosh as well as Windows machines? Do you need to have Linux machines present? Is there a sub-community in your patrons that wants to be able to do scientific work or mathematic work, and are applications present for that? Is most of your patronage working on developing their business skills? Does the programming reflect that? And so by sitting down with administrators as well as technologists at the library, we're able to discover these things and do it in a very structured way with a couple of worksheets that have been developed for this purpose, and end up making a series of recommendations based on that assessment. And implementation is usually a matter of having a discussion with the people that they already have in place in order to do technology support, but very often can be opened up to other vendors, other consultants, etc. So this is something that I've done a few times in the last couple years, and I really love that work because it's one of these things that you can walk away after the project is done and see how the library or the organization is transformed to be able to meet the needs of their users better. Hello?
Hi.
So,
I've done this myself, actually, where there's a couple nonprofit organizations that I used to work for. I mentioned before I'm kind of getting out of that business, but a similar thing where came in, looked at the current infrastructure, communication platforms and such, and looked at their budget, which was often $0, and what free tools could we leverage to become more effective at our communication and utilization of IT tools. And what is that? What is that?
that's somebody calling me.
All right. And Google Apps. When Google Apps used to be free, and you could just sign up for it and plug your domain into it, it was a great solution. To bring a lot of small budgeted or no budgeted organizations into the 21st century, so to speak. With groupware, with calendaring, email, shared services and document management. So I haven't really done an assessment for an organization, on the scale of a library, but absolutely can identify everything that you're talking about. I talk with IT professionals all the time in different industries. Sometimes it gets frustrating too, because I'll speak to somebody and they're like, "Oh, I got this, I got this problem right now," and I'll be like, "Well, this is an easy solution, and solution X is what you should be really doing." And they'll be like, "Yeah, well, and that's what frustrates the hell out of me is when you have a tried and true solution, and someone comes to you for advice, and then they're like, well, and they rebuff your advice, and that's one of the most frustrating things for me, especially when doing the type of technological assessments or advisements that you and I tend to give in our daily lives.
Yeah, and I think that that is a concern. It's often a situation where even though somebody is going through the effort of an assessment, they have their own biases, as we all do. And a consultant has biases too. I come in and I have my experience, and I may have had a really bad experience with some particular vendor solution that I may shy away from trying to ask them to use this, even though it might be the best solution for them. And so I try to tamp that down, and make sure that I'm not dismissing a solution just because it's not what I would choose. But part of the reason that they're calling me in as opposed to somebody else is because I have experiences, and so you have to sort of work that out, offer all the possibilities, and then talk about what the pros and cons are for certain situations. Sometimes the cons are not big cons for them. And I think that in academic technology assessment, you probably do this all the time in your work, because you are always assessing faculty needs, and a consultation with one faculty member and their needs has the same treachery and has the same benefits. It's like anything can happen in the smallest transaction or the largest transaction. Smallest transaction, for example, this thing with QuickCheck. So it's I think great important work, though. I think that by sitting down with somebody, really assessing what it is that they need, either for a specific project or for their larger outlook on their planning for the next year or 2 years, it can be an important discussion to have. And if you're not having the discussion, it's much more difficult to assess whether or not you're prepared for what's happening next.
Let me ask you a question. I was in a situation a couple of years ago where I was brought in with a fellow IT professional, and we had to come up with a solution for a medical organization that had to abide by HIPAA compliance. And based on that, the solution that we had to come up with, had to be HIPAA compliant, and therefore it raised the bar of the cost of the solution. And we put together this proposal, and it was like, oh, they're like, oh, well, this is 3 times more than we were looking to spend, and but in reality, it was the cheapest way that they could have a solution and be in compliance with their regulations. We ended up not getting a callback on that solution, and never getting the business. Well, but what do you do as someone who you work with, if you're working in libraries, different counties and townships have different budgets. Like, for example, let's say you were brought into the city of Trenton. As we know, the whole library system in Trenton is shut down, and Mayor Mack has reopened the libraries as learning centers, right? So what would you do in a situation like that, where you're asked to kind of do the impossible?
Well, that happens pretty often, actually. Sometimes we are for lack of a better word, blessed with a large budget for technology infrastructure changes and improvements. And sometimes the budget is zero or less than zero. Sometimes there's debt involved, and sometimes that definitely hinders what you can do. But depending on what the technology is, of course, there may be free solutions that can do the job. They may not be the best solution in the world, or they might be the perfect solution. It really depends on the particular need. If we're talking about an ILS, a library content management system, then you are given some options. There are open source ILSs, for example, and those things are for managing customer experience, fees, circulation, sometimes reference, usually managing all the objects in the database that the library owns. And because there are open source solutions, sometimes at least you can avoid the licensing for the ILS, even though support is not going to be zero, and you have to prioritize. So usually in these assessments where we're doing a whole hog assessment, we usually have an immediate need, an intermediate need, and a long-term need, where we sort of prioritize what we want to happen over time. And as a result, you have some choices about what you can take care of right now, what you need to establish a budget for in the meantime for the future, and what you would like to see happen if money happens later. And usually there's a transaction with the mayor or the council, if it's a public library, for example, in order to determine how those things can happen. And it depends on how much support there is from that infrastructure for libraries. There is usually a way to do what we want to do. It's just whether or not it is the best way is sometimes a result of how much money you have to throw at it. Sometimes it has nothing to do with money. Sometimes it has to do with what staff you have in-house in order to help with training. It depends on what kind of effort you consider adding new skills to people on staff, whether or not you consider it an effort or a boon. And those are all really sometimes emotional conversations. It requires a bit of emotional intelligence to say, how do you think that Jimmy would feel about taking on the role of part-time webmaster? Or how do it depends on who's got the skills, who has the want, and who would not reject it because they would feel like they were being given extra work without necessarily getting any more pay. But this really begins to speak to organizational development and organizational theory, where if you scratch beneath the surface, you realize that most people are motivated not primarily by money, but by some other set of things, such as pride in their work, or the ability to do new and interesting things, or the ability to get a pat on the back every once in a while, or the ability to say, I was the one who accomplished that, or the ability to work with others in interesting ways, or the ability to interact more with stakeholders and patrons, or any number of things, more time with your family. So if you're able to assess those things and able to determine that Jimmy, the aforementioned person in our little scheme here where we're asking him to do web work, if he really loves to do web work and he wants to be able to spend more time with his family on weekends, then would we be able to work something out schedule-wise to give him weekends off if he was to take on some additional tasks in developing web content on a regular basis in order to help programming success, or in order to make patrons more aware of new arrivals to the stacks, you know, that kind of a thing. But what I definitely don't want to say is that there is a one-size-fits-all solution. There's not. It's definitely according to budget, according to the culture of the particular organization, according to the people who are there, according to what people are willing to take on. And the higher the value of those things, the more likely that success will happen. And sometimes the work is in convincing people that they are able to do this and able to do it well.
Well, I appreciate you going into detail about that and gave me some perspective on how to handle situations like that in the future. And hopefully our listeners will benefit from that advice as well.
I hope so too. And thank you so much for the question.
No problem. Any closing words, John?
I just wanted to say thank you very much, as always, for another great week and for the opportunity to have what's always a fun, insightful, and educational discussion.
Well, thank you, John. I have a programming note for our listeners. John and I will be finishing out the month of May, so we will have an episode on May 6th, May 13th, May 20th, and May 27th will be our last episode for the season, and we will be taking off the months of June, July, and August, and we will be returning the week of September 2nd. We will make announcements on Facebook and such as to the specific day. Maybe we will not stick with a Monday. We will come to that decision. So maybe you'll hear from us over the break. Maybe we'll do like a special one-off in the middle of the summer or something. Maybe we'll record individual like 5-minute clips that we'll upload to the feed or something. I don't know. So, you know, if you're not subscribed to us on Stitcher or through RSS or through your favorite podcasting solution, do so. And we might be surprising you with some summer content. But we still have a whole month to go. And I'm looking forward to the next 4 episodes with you, John.
Me too. Thank you so much, Sean.
No problem, man. I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks a lot.